Good morning, everyone. Now, this session will cover economics and finance news for July 1st, July 11 to 31. Okay. So, it will be limited to economics and financial news. Okay. Let's wait for 1 minute, then we'll start. So, economic news will be covered here now. And for ESIs, for static subjects, there will be classes, and we have already provided classes under paid courses. Okay. This is more of a current affairs specific content that we'll discuss right now. Okay, so let's start with this. So good morning, everybody. My name is Mayank. In today's session, we'll discuss all the specific economic and financial news from July 11th till July 31. Okay. Although I have, instead of covering the content from 11 to 20 and then 21 to 30, I have distributed the content. First, specific economic news we will discuss today, and in the next session we will discuss all the relevant circulars of all India financial institutions or regulatory institutions. Okay, be it of RBI, SEBI, IRDA or NABARD. Okay, so most of our content will be finished today only. Okay, so before just going into this content, let's first understand the broader economic, global economic as well as the domestic economic context upon which the whole news is actually coming. Because once we understand the global context, we'll be able to much more relate to the news that is coming right now. Okay, and all the issues, the global issues, you're already familiar with, and this is just I'm revising you, making you revise all the issues so that you understand the news upon which it is coming. Okay, as you all know, globally, the world has recently faced worst economic crisis arising out of COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, and upon this, Russia-Ukraine conflict exaggerated the various issues that were already present. Okay, and these two issues led to supply chain disruptions. What does supply chain disruption do in the global economy? It reduces the commodity supply. And this is the basic law of supply and demand. If the supply is less while demand is constant, then obviously the prices will increase, and this will lead to high inflation. And this is another issue that the whole global economy, even India, has been facing since the pandemic. And because of this high inflation, you must have seen monetary policy tightening being done by most of the central banks, be it of Federal Reserve of the US, be it of European Central Bank, and even our central bank also. RBI has been consistently increasing the policy rate. Recently, it has only just kept the rate unchanged, but still in the guidance also, RBI says that we are not trying to reverse the policy of withdrawal of accommodation, because we are actually trying to see whether inflation is persisting or not. If it will increase, then we'll continue to increase the rate. Okay, so these are the broad conditions upon which the global economy is functioning right now. And because these issues are persisting right now also, you can see reduction in exports and imports of various countries. So that means global trade is right now very much less. Okay, it is in this broad context we will see most of the news, and you will be much more relate to the indicators that we will see in the news, that various exports is declining, and why it is declining. This is the context upon which it is declining. Okay, so I hope this context is very much clear. So let's start with the news. We'll go from below to the top. Okay, so first is basic news that India will host global summit of food safety regulators. Okay, so FSSAI is conducting this global food regulator summit. It will held in New Delhi, and 40 countries including G20 members will attend this. And since this meeting has already happened, they have actually adopted a resolution on improving food safety systems. Food safety is very much important because it tackles various issues related to trans fats, contamination, and various other things that increases the toxicity within the food. Recently, you must have seen the cases of Bonvita as well as Maggi also, that the content in those products were not appropriate for the healthy lifestyle of people. Okay, so importance of food safety is very much there. And FSSAI, the main thing that we need to learn from this news is FSSAI was established by Food Safety and Standards Act 2006. Okay, so this is this news. Next we'll move on to the another news, which is India-Iran plan to route Russia trade through Chabahar port. As you all know, Chabahar port is in Iran. The important significance of this Chabahar port was visible during Afghanistan. We wanted access to Chabahar port when democratic government was there in Afghanistan. We wanted to supply food products, exports from Chabahar directly to Afghanistan, because since Afghanistan is a landlocked country and there exists Pakistan in between Afghanistan and India, so we wanted another path so that we can access these exports. But right now we are actually using Chabahar for Russia trade. Amidst the Russia-Ukraine conflict, we are actually buying cheap oil from Russia, and this is a very good opportunity for us because we are very much dependent on food energy security. Okay, most of our import bill is due to oil purchase. Okay, so right now what they are doing is they are actually materializing this international north-south trade corridor. What is this international north-south trade corridor? So this was actually conceptualized in 2000 between India, Iran and Russia. Okay, so they wanted to have a route that connects directly to from India to Russia and Northern Europe. Right now, what the trade route is, we will see on the map itself. Okay, but before that, let's see what the news is all about. So, Muhammad Miri, he's actually an advisor of Chabahar Free Zone in Iran. He says that we'll materialize or we'll make this trade corridor operational in coming days to increase Russian trade with India. Okay. And they are talking about two ports, Chabahar port as well as Bandar Abbas port. So they are saying most of the trade of India and Iran actually is being done from Bandar Abbas port, but they want to increase the operational tendency of Chabahar port. So let's see. If we see the geography of this, we'll understand this in much better way. I hope this is visible. So as I was saying, this is the traditional route that trade from Russia follows. It goes through Baltic Sea, North Sea, Celtic, Mediterranean, then it goes from Suez Canal, then it comes to Mumbai. Obviously, this is a very long route. So that's why Russia, Iran and India came up with International North-South Corridor. Okay. And as you can see, this is Chabahar port and this is Bandar Abbas port. So mostly trade is through Bandar Abbas port. But right now they are actually trying to focus or make Chabahar port more operational so that it not only acts as a conduit to Moscow, but it also acts as a conduit to Kabul also. And operationalizing or materializing of this trade route is important for India's Central Asia policy too. Because this region, the bilateral trade between these countries and India is very much low because of obviously the mountains is there. So the trade routes are not very, you can say, fluid, okay, and it is very much costly. But if this becomes operational, obviously it will help. Okay, so I hope you understand this International North-South Corridor. Let's move on to the next news. It says that India and US to work on multilateral development banks, climate action and inclusion. So it is nothing but they are actually talking about how much comprehensive the India and US partnership has become. Earlier, because any partnership might involve trade or any other thing, or it may be political, but India-US partnership has not only become bilateral, multilateral as well as global partnership. How do we say bilateral, multilateral and global partnership? Because trade, you can say, is a bilateral aspect between India and US that both countries deal with. Multilateral aspect meaning restricted to a region. For example, cooperation in Indo-Pacific becomes a multilateral cooperation between these two nations. And what about global partnership? When we are talking about global partnership, we are talking about global issues such as climate change, such as terrorism, such as emerging technologies. Okay, so in this way you can see that India and US have a very much comprehensive global partnership. So India US, they recently met, the finance minister as well as US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen actually met, and they talked about various things that US and India have a consensus on cooperation in multilateral development banks. These include Asian Development Bank, Asia Infrastructure Development, banks like these, New Development Bank. Okay, so I hope you understand this. Promoting climate action, see, facilitating energy transition, that means renewable energy, okay, and the consensus on indebtedness of low and middle income countries. That obviously after the pandemic, various low and middle low income and middle income countries have accumulated various debt. So both countries recognize this problem and both countries are actually cooperating to reduce this problem. And how they can do this? Through a platform of G20. Okay, so this is the broader context in which these two countries are cooperating also. And lastly, very important, digital public infrastructure. This includes obviously UPI, Aadhaar, CoWIN, and recently Open Network for Digital Commerce, ONDC. Okay, so I hope this news is covered. Next is about merger between HDFC Bank as well as HDFC. So recently both these entities actually merged, and HDFC actually merged into HDFC Bank. A new entity of HDFC Bank actually came, and what happened is the shareholders of HDFC were issued shares of HDFC Bank because this stock actually stopped traded in stock market. Okay, and this actually make HDFC Bank amongst the top banks of the whole world. Okay, so the rankings are also mentioned here. You can see JP Morgan is the world's most valuable bank. After that, Bank of America is there. Then China's Industrial Commercial Bank is there, and Agriculture Bank of China occupies the 4th position. Okay. HDFC Bank is now 7th most valuable lender globally. And because HDFC Limited, which got merged into HDFC Bank, was very much capable, because the systems of HDFC Limited was very much robust in terms of home loans, and with that systems in hand, HDFC Bank may become a very good home loan lender. Okay, so the merger will actually benefit not only the HDFC Bank but also the customers also. Okay, because now customers will have an array of products in various financial aspects. Next is about, there was a finance minister and central bank governors event in G20. Okay, and in that event, India actually showcases its various innovation that it has done in the fintech sector, be it of frictionless credit as well as digital central bank digital currency. So what do we mean by frictionless credit? As you can understand from the word itself, that frictionless meaning that anything which moves smoothly, doesn't have any barriers to it. Okay, so let's understand this also. And this frictionless credit is in the context of Kisan credit card, and which is also very much important in terms of financial inclusion. Under this, they say that under frictionless credit, by using digitized land records, the banks will automatically sanction as well as disburse the credit card loan to farmers without involvement of farmer coming to the bank also. So it's a very comprehensive digital solution provided by the banks through credit card scheme in a frictionless manner. Okay. And this obviously, as you can see from the process itself, it has various applications. If we operationalize this process into various other fintech schemes, obviously this will help in improving financial inclusion of our nation. Okay, and next is CBDC. As you all are aware, the pilot program of e-retail, CBDC retail rupee is actually going on, as well as various RBI deputy governors is also talking about that we are trying to improve the interoperability between CBDC as well as UPI, because mostly all the people are right now very much accustomed to UPI, and if we operationalize or if we make the interoperability of CBDC as well as UPI, we'll have a very much good fintech sector. Okay. So next is about India-US mutually resolve all 6 trade disputes at World Trade Organization. Okay, so right now what we are actually discussing here, why if there is a World Trade Organization body, then why both countries needs to sit together and resolve disputes? Because right now World Trade Organization's appellate body is defunct. That means it is not working. And why it is not working? Because for this body to work, this body must have a quorum of 3 judges. Okay, and right now there are only 2 judges, and the appointment of the 3rd judge is being stopped by USA, because appointment of judges also require consensus of all the nations. Okay, and that's why because this body is defunct. Even recently when countries like Japan talked about India's tariff in electronics and IT sector, and even WTO talked about reducing those tariffs, but India actually went to appellate body, and since this body is defunctional, it doesn't have any ramifications on India's tariff structure. Okay, so right now based on this example, it helps us. It may be beneficial in the short term, but having a global body defunct is not good for global relations or global economic relations. Okay, so in this news, that WTO has already issued a communication with regard to one of the disputes related to the imposition of additional custom duties by India on 28 US products. So as you can see, various tariffs have been imposed by India on US products, and even vice versa also, US also has put various tariffs during the previous president's term also. Okay, next is Export Preparedness Index released by Niti Aayog. Okay, so in this we have to understand that right now Tamil Nadu is the top, then Maharashtra, and then Karnataka. Okay, Gujarat, which used to be at the top from past 2-3 years, has shifted to 4th place. Okay, as you can see from the infographic itself. Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Gujarat. Okay, and the common similarity between all these states you can understand from the fact that all these are coastal states. And since all coastal states have export infrastructure inbuilt in their economy, obviously these will obviously come out on the top of the rankings. Okay, but in terms of landlocked state, Haryana is the highest ranked state under Niti Aayog Export Preparedness Index. Just remember these 4 main pillars, which is policy, business ecosystem, export ecosystem, and export performance. These are the 4 main pillars upon which this index have been prepared, and also how many indicators? 56 indicators. Okay, 4 main pillars, 56 indicators, and the ranking and by Niti Aayog. That's all from this news. Next is Niti Aayog report on poverty. It says 135 million people escaped from poverty between 2015-16 to 2019-21. Okay, And this is as per latest National Multidimensional Poverty Index released by Niti Aayog. And they have used the data of National Family Health Survey 5. Okay. And this is the percentage absolute terms also, that from 24.85% in 2015-16, the poverty actually reduced to 14.96%. Okay. And this data actually came just after the UNDP report on multidimensional poverty index, which talked about that 415 million people moved out of multidimensional poverty in 15 years, that is from 2005 till 2019-21. Earlier figure was 275 million, that came out in 2015-16, but right now even 415 million people came out of multidimensional poverty in India. This MDPI index contains education, health, and living necessities. Okay. Because initially what used to happen, we used to measure poverty in terms of the income only, but since the philosophy given by Amartya Sen also in terms of capability approach, we got to know that deprivations in these areas also refers to poverty. So incorporating these factors enables us to understand the intensity of poverty as well as, okay, because incidence we can understand that it refers to percentage of population that is below poverty line, but how much intensity of poverty is there we can understand from various parameters associated with these things. Okay. Next is DICGC asked banks to display its logo. So they are actually, DICG is actually doing this so as to make customers aware about that they have an insurance of 5 lakh rupees per account in case of any banking crisis. Because as you understand that recently in US, Silicon Valley bank crisis happened, and even in India, PMC bank crisis happened earlier. Okay, so if we have a security of 5 lakh, up to 5 lakh deposits being insured, then obviously customers are much more relaxed. Okay, so this is this news, nothing else is there. Next is Macy's record credit card spending. Okay, so credit card spending is there. It has actually increased and it has shown record credit card spending. So in this, you can say it is attributed to various offers given by credit card companies in various e-commerce websites, and this includes every sector that you can imagine. Also lounge facilities being given by credit cards and various other facilities in terms of flights as well as various tickets. So even as you can understand from the travel perspective also, post pandemic travel actually increased, and all things associated with travel involves credit card spending, that also increased. Okay, next is Nagaland bans single use plastic, and this is in compliance with directives from CPCB, Central Pollution Control Board. So can anybody tell that by which act this CPCB is formed? Not Pollution Act. There is no Pollution Act. There is either Environment Protection Act, Air Pollution Act, Water Pollution Act. Pick any one from these three options that I have just told. Satyasai says environment protection. Anybody else? Under which act CPCB has been established? So, Prevention of Water Pollution Act 1974 actually established CPCB. Okay. So, just take this into account also. Okay. So, just a static news that Nagaland bans single-use plastic, and this is a national directive also based on CPCB. Okay. Let's go to the next news. That sovereign gold bond sales hit record in June. So how much? Please remember this data also. Okay. Since it's a recorded sale of sovereign gold bonds at 7.77 tons, valued at 4,604 crores in the first series of this fiscal year. Okay. So sovereign gold bond scheme, it is very important for any regulatory perspective examination. So sovereign gold bond scheme actually is a substitute to buy gold. And why the government actually launched this scheme? Because as you all know, the import of gold in India actually incurs a very high import bill for the country. And high import dependency is not very good for current account deficit also. So to substitute gold and to provide customers the same value of gold, okay, the government has launched this scheme. So I'll just explain this sovereign gold bond scheme a bit more. Okay. So what is sovereign gold bond? Sovereign gold bond is a government security expressed in gold. For example, sovereign gold bond of 1 gram is the minimum, up to 4 kg is the maximum for an individual. Okay. So suppose 10 gram of gold bond I have purchased. Okay. So I'll pay the cash for it, and at the maturity, whatever the price of gold will be there, that will be provided to me in cash. Okay. However, the bond is denominated in gold. So it acts as a gold purchase. Okay. Because as you all know, in India, gold is a very much utilized saving instrument for all the nation, all the individuals in our country. Okay. And I've already told you the limit also. For individual, it is 1 gram to 4 kg. Okay. Prepare this scheme comprehensively whenever you are giving any exam related to RBI or anybody else. Next is outward FDI fell 50% in first half of 2023, and this is from Jan to June. Okay. So outward FDI, inward FDI, that means investment from other nations into our companies. Similarly, investments from India into other nations actually fell 50%. Since I've already told you that global economic context is not very much good, because in US inflationary crisis as well as banking crisis is there, so demand is very much low over there, because even the Federal Reserve has been continuously tightening its monetary policy. So because of all these conditions, the demand is very low. That's why even IT companies are not performing very good in the stock market, because they are very much dependent on the exports to US. Okay, so that's why outward FDI fell 50% in first half of 2022-23. And let's see the absolute value also. Outward FDI fell about 50% to 11.12 billion from earlier 23.57 billion. Okay, and rest is, since this is a dynamic news, we'll just see the context in which this is happening. Okay, next news is about World Bank must go beyond poverty focus. So this is actually the World Bank director talking about that we must not just focus on poverty, we must focus on other global issues as well, such as climate change, pandemic, fragility, as well as food insecurity. Because in various nations, especially the most vulnerable island nations, are facing the brunt of climate change. Okay, so we have to not just focus on poverty, and we have to adopt a comprehensive approach dealing with these things. Okay, let's go to the next thing. Another news which talks about that multilateral development banks need 3 trillion extra spending a year till 2030. You can relate this news from the just news that we have just discussed right now, that World Bank President Director is saying that we need to comprehensively act on various global issues, and to tackle such global issues we need support. Every nation needs support from multilateral developments, be it Asian Development Bank, Asia Infrastructure Bank, New Development Bank, even World Bank, global banks also. Because as you all must have read in various news that these multilateral banks have been funding or providing grants to various states to focus on their infrastructure building. Okay, so this is the estimate of how much every year that we will need to tackle all the global issues. Next is auto exports slid to 28% in June quarter. India as a nation has a very good export market in Africa. Okay, and this Society of Indian Automobile Manufacturers, it's saying that because of monetary crisis in Africa and various other developing countries on account of Federal Reserve and because of accumulated debt that we had just discussed right now, the auto exports has been reduced. Okay, because inflation does what? It reduces the spending power of people. Okay, the money loses its value, and even various reports have been saying that various countries will face the brunt of recession, except India, because India has the low probability of a recession. Okay, next is India's global digital public infrastructure proposal faces resistance from developed nations. Things like Aadhaar, CoWIN, UPI that are actually increasingly getting integrated into the global economy, then why these developed nations are saying or are resisting India's digital public infrastructure? Obviously, if you will see what the reason is all about, then you'll just get to know that obviously this thing takes primacy over there. See, these nations argues that this move may impede the growth of global private payment processors. If UPI is already providing you open access to various payment systems, then why? Because in India also private companies are also benefiting from UPI. Then this move is just, as you can say, a very capitalistic or protectionist tendency in the developed nations. Okay, and this is very important that UPI has been integrated in Singapore's payment system, as well as UAE, as well as France. Next is about ISRO launches Chandrayaan-3. Okay, this time earlier in Chandrayaan-2 there was one orbiter also Vikram lander. This got successfully operationalized into the moon's orbit. However, Vikram lander crash landed onto the moon surface, and this time in Chandrayaan 3 you can see there is no orbiter, because since this orbiter is also already placed there, there is no need for an orbiter, but there is a new lander over there. And if this mission gets successful, that India will become the 4th nation to land its rover in moon. Okay, also India, if this mission gets successful, India will become the first nation to do soft landing on the south pole of the moon. Okay, so that is also important. Let's go to the next news. That government is aiming 100 million ton of coal gasification. What do we mean by coal gasification? It is a process of producing syngas, also known as coal gas, from coal and water. Okay. What does this syngas include? Carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, methane, as well as water vapors. Okay. And what is the importance of this syngas? If this syngas or coal gas is actually cooled down, then we are able to liquefy it. Okay. And this you all know, liquefied natural gas. If we can produce liquefied natural gas through coal gasification process, then our import bill will reduce, and this will help us in energy security. Okay, so this is another aspect or initiative of government in terms of energy transition program. Okay, let's understand what is the target right now. So they have set a target by 2030 we will gasify 100 million tons of coal. Okay, so remember this target, 100 million tons of coal will be gasified by financial year 2030. And for this, they will actually considering a comprehensive scheme with an outlay of 6,000 crores to promote coal and lignite gasification for both public as well as private sector. Okay, so we have to wait for the next budget. Most probably this scheme will be there. Okay. Let's move on to the next thing. Government to consider new drugs bill to regulate imports manufacturing. And what is the context of this new bill? You must have read or maybe heard about various children died on account of cough syrup built by Indian manufacturer in Central Asian country as well as in Gambia. Okay, around 89 children died because of this cough syrup produced by India, and this cough syrup was produced by Haryana based manufacturer, made in pharma. Okay, so they were saying that some constituents such as diethylene glycol was higher in those cough syrup, but the company actually denied it. So government is actually trying to produce a bill that will actually regulate strictly the manufacturing of pharma products, because this actually reduces, or this actually put a stain on India's pharma industry. And India, as you all know, is very known for its pharma industry in the whole world. Medical tourism is one of the crucial aspects or one of the crucial services exports that India does. Okay, so this is the news. India pharmacy of the world image has suffered on account of death of 89 children at least in Gambia and Uzbekistan. So that's why they are actually trying to put a highest possible regulatory standards, and this is the corpus of industry that the India has. Next is banks park 59% of notified amount in VRRR. This is nothing but variable rate reverse repo. So variable rate reverse repo is a mechanism for RBI that actually absorbs excess liquidity within the Indian economy. Also, why it is says variable rate? Because as you all know, reverse repo rate directly comes from whatever the policy rate that the government fixes. So this is not fixed, variable. The rate at which RBI absorbs, it has a range. You can say from 6 to 7% or 5 to 6%. Based on demand can be used. Okay. So RBI actually absorbed 37,800 crore excess liquidity. Okay. Next is wholesale prices contract to 8-year low in June. As we had already discussed in previous months that WPI came into negative territory. However, it continued to persist in the negative territory and came to minus 4.12%. Okay, so WPI, as you all know, it doesn't included services segment. So let's see what segment does WPI actually have, what are the basket and what is the weightage. Because in the examination, these data doesn't come. In the examination, the static data with respect to these indicators do come. Okay. So this is the latest data of wholesale price index. Okay. So as you can see, all commodities that is under WPI. So primary articles has a weightage of 22.62%. As you can see, what are primary articles? Food articles are there. Okay. Non-food articles are there. Some minerals is there, and crude petroleum and natural gas is there. Okay. This is under primary articles. Next is fuel power. Fuel and power, 13.15% is the weightage. Okay, this include LPG, petrol and HSD. Okay, then what about the third one? Manufactured products has the highest weightage under WPI, 64.23%. Okay, so only three things: fuel and power, manufactured products and primary articles. You need to learn. Manufactured products has the highest weightage, then primary articles, then fuel and power. Okay, there are no services in that. And just remember the recent finding, that at least know that whether it is in the negative territory or in the positive territory. Let's go to the next news. Exports see sharpest decline in the 3 years. As I've already told you, what was the global context? Because various issues were persisting in the global economy, exports show a critical decline over there. Okay, so let's see the figure. So 32.97 billion it fell down to in the last month. That is June data. Okay. Similarly, even imports also fell. It's shown a decline of 17.6%. But this is just a quarter-wise data. The data which becomes important for you is the annual data that we will discuss here. So this is the annual data of exports, and this is very important for you. Please do remember this data. Okay. So in terms of exports, merchandise exports came out to be $447.46 billion, okay, in 2022-23. This data you need to remember. Also imports of merchandise came out to be $714.24 billion. As you can see from the data itself that we have a trade deficit okay. So remember this. Next is about India to host ASEAN conference on traditional medicines on 20th July. Okay, just a basic news, self-explanatory. ASEAN countries and Indian mission to ASEAN on 20th July will have a conference on traditional medicines, and this is important in context of, first of all, data sharing. That means any Indian traditional medicines such as Unani, Yoga, Ayurveda, okay, not Yoga, Ayurveda. So these things can be shared to ASEAN nations, and any traditional medicines having by ASEAN countries will be given to us, okay. And this will also improve the, or you can say it will protect the IPR rights of India's traditional medicines, because right now infringing of these rights is happening in the global segment. Next is data protection bill widens the scope of deemed consent. Does anybody know what is the difference between consent and deemed consent? If you can explain, otherwise obviously I'll explain. So I'll tell you, deemed consent, as you can understand from the word you must have already heard about, deemed university, that this is the consent under which no information is provided to individual about taking his or her data, okay. So without informing an individual, if we can take his or her data and utilize their data, that is known as deemed consent, okay. And the government is actually expanding the definition of deemed consent, which they are saying that it will be used for policy making as well as deployment of schemes, okay. So this is with respect to data protection bill. So once this data protection bill will come, we'll understand this much more, okay. Next is news is about European Investment Bank will offer 1 billion euros loan for green hydrogen mission. This green hydrogen mission is very much important, even in case of NABARD also, okay. So we need to prepare this very thoroughly. Green hydrogen mission launched by government recently with a corpus of 19,744 crores, okay. Remember the outlay from financial year 23-24 to financial year 29-30, okay. So this is very important. And what are the targets under green hydrogen mission? Let's see also that. So these are the components announced under mission. So facilitating demand creation, this site program is there, strategic interventions for green hydrogen transition, pilot projects is there, green hydrogen hubs are there, infra development, robust framework for regulation standards, R&D, skill development, public awareness, okay. So remember these things, because these things directly come in the examination. Usually what happens is they just go to the scheme page and they actually copy objectives from there and put it into the question. Then you might get confused that if this option is there or not. So at least read these objectives once. Okay, next is the target or expected outcomes of the mission by 2030. So Indian green hydrogen production capacity is likely to reach 5 million metric tons per annum, and this is by 2030. Okay, so remember this target, very important. Okay, and this target will help us reduce 1 lakh crore worth of fossil fuel imports. Okay, and nearly 50 million metric tons per annum of carbon dioxide emissions are expected to be averted. This will help us in achieving the targets that we had set in COP26, that the Prime Minister actually talked about in the COP26 panel. Okay, this we have already discussed. Credit card spend actually highest in May. Next news is about India-China trade shows first signs of slowdown in years. As you must have seen that even in the context of various border disputes between India and China, trade actually continued to remain robust. Okay. However, right now it showed a very minuscule fall, that is 0.9% fall in first half of this year. And this is not due to any structural issue. This is due to China's inability to cope with COVID-19 pandemic. Okay. And because of this, the Chinese economy has recently slowed down. So that's why the exports or the bilateral trade has shown reduction. Okay. Next is very basic data. These data actually must be prepared from either, if you are giving NABARD or any other data, it should be prepared from State of Economy report just before the exam. So if your exam in October, then from September you must prepare data. Otherwise, we must prepare from either annual or biannual reports. Okay, let's move on to the next. The Minister of Telecom is actually saying that we are making India Mobile Congress as the most sought after national premier technology event. Just like various expos that you must have heard about in Dubai. So they are actually trying to make India Mobile Congress the most prominent technological event. These news is continuing negotiations between India and UK regarding free trade agreement. Okay, so various rounds of agreement have been happening between India and UK, and they are trying to formulate a free trade agreement. But right now there is nothing concrete is there. So once a concrete free trade agreement will be prepared, we'll show this. Next is India is actually trying to propose to include Africa as G20 member. And this proposal actually receives overwhelming support from all other G20 members. Okay, so this is this news, nothing else. Next is retail inflation rises to 3-month high, and this is what actually RBI was talking about while maintaining its policy of withdrawal of accommodation. They actually wanted to see that whether low inflation will persist or not, or whether this low inflation will reverse back to high inflation. So this you can see from 4.31% it has increased to 4.81%. However, this is within the mandated range of Monetary Policy Committee, but the trends have been reversing, and this is also visible as you also know that tomato prices recently have been skyrocketing, and this is why, and that's why this report is also saying that prices of food and beverages actually drove the CPI. Okay, this report we have already discussed. UNDP Multidimensional Poverty Index, 415 million Indians lifted out of poverty in 15 years. Next is news about Hampi G20, and this is just another G20 meeting. of Sherpas, okay, and digital public infrastructure and green growth are the main topics that people will discuss. This is another India-UK free trade deal talks. This is important, okay. So as you all know, government is actually focusing upon increasing capital expenditure in the whole nation. So that's why even capital expenditure in the budget has been increased, okay. So similarly, the targets have been set or given to central public sector entities. So the target of annual target of capital expenditure is 7.33 trillion in this financial year, okay. And the report or the news is actually saying that 32% of this target has already been achieved in the first quarter. That means from April to June, okay. So as you can see from this infographic, that budget target earlier was 6.62, right now it is 7.33. And what is the capex achieved earlier at this point of time? 20.7%, but right now 32% has already been achieved. This is a very remarkable achievement, but if these things continues to persist, structural development of this nation will actually provide multiplier effects, okay, to the economy. Next news is in the context of internationalization of Indian rupees. So what we are actually trying to do, trying to use local currencies to settle bilateral trade, and that's why India and Bangladesh have come to an agreement to settle their trade deficit or surplus in their local nation currencies, okay, that is Taka and rupee, okay. So they have agreed upon this. Also Taka rupee dual currency card will be ready by September. So what is this? It will be a debit card that can be used in both countries. So suppose if you are in Bangladesh, you can use this card and actually pay in terms of Taka, okay. But if you are in India, you can use this card to pay in terms of rupee. So this will help. Next is GST Council meeting, recently occurred, very important, okay. This is the 50th GST Council meeting. Okay, remember this number. And what are the major deployments of this GST Council, or what are the major highlights of this GST Council? They say that these things are exempted from GST: cancer fighting drugs, satellite launch services by private operators. This is a very good initiative on the government part to actually help or support private sector in space, because right now ISRO and various other ISRO's agencies are also supporting private startups, okay, such as Bellatrix Aerospace, Skyroot Aerospace, okay. And what other taxes were there? So GST rate on food served in cinema has been reduced from 18% to 5%, okay. Tax on uncooked and unfried snack pellets also reduced from 18% to 5%, and this is uncooked, okay. The SUV definition has been redefined. It includes, and this has been redefined to attract a cess over and above the GST rate. So whatever the government is actually losing from here, they're actually gaining from there. And last but the most important one is that government actually imposed 28% GST rate on online gaming and casinos. So you can see various stock of companies like Dream 11, My 11 Circles have been reduced on account of this. Even a company named Delta Corp stock has also reduced market capitalization because of this decision. Okay. So just remember the news, you will be much more sorted. Next is about equity mutual fund flows, hit 3-month high of 8,245 crores. So this news continuously keeps on changing. The static portion that you need to learn is okay. So what are the types of mutual funds? There are, so first we are only talking about equity mutual funds. So these mutual funds invest in large cap stocks, mid cap stocks and small cap stocks. Okay. So what do we mean by cap? Cap is nothing but market capitalization. So market capitalization of 5,000 up to 5,000 crores are and more than 20,000 crores. Okay. So this is market capitalization. So apart from this, so the news actually talked about that small cap mutual funds received the highest amount of inflow. So this usually means that there is an actually appropriate amount of liquidity within the system. So people, and also investors sentiment is also high, because usually small cap stocks are usually risky. Okay. Let's move on to the next thing, which is direct tax mop up in financial year 24 rises 16%, that is 4.75 trillion so far. So direct tax is used at this point of time, that is year on year growth is 16%. This the finance ministry actually talked about. Okay. Finance ministry asked Indian Bank Association to finalize wage revisions of public sector banks. So it is the 12th bipartite settlement that had to be finalized on, that will be finalized on December 1st, 2023. So the finance ministry is saying just do it quickly. And recently you must have also heard about 2 days holiday, a proposal for 2 days holidays for bank employees also. Next is world's second largest economy by 2075. It is told by Goldman Sachs. Okay, so it's a report by Goldman Sachs which actually talked about that India will surpass the USA also and will become second largest economy by 2075, and its GDP will become 52.5 trillion. These are just figures that you need to just cram right now. Currently India is 5th largest, and right now it has already reached 3.5 trillion GDP figure. Okay. Last news is about IPEF, that is Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. So in this 3-year exit clause is being talked about. So what do we mean by this 3-year exit clause? As you all know, there are 4 pillars within this Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, and these 4 pillars include supply chains, clean economy, fair economy, and as well as trade. So as you all know, India has already become the partner in supply chain, clean and fair economy, but India decided to opt out of trade pillar. So to attract India to come to join trade pillar, 3-year exit clause is there. So if any nation wants to exit any pillar, they can do so after 3 years. So this is actually a proposal that has been put under IPEF, and once it will materialize, we'll see fine figures or subtle details about that proposal. Okay. So this is all from my end. In the next session, we'll cover the circular news or any other news that has been important from the perspective of July. Okay. If there is any other confusion, please do tell. I'm here to clear your doubts. Otherwise, we'll end this session. So thank you guys for joining. We'll meet in the next session. Okay, thank you.